The calmer you become, the faster money starts reaching you. Napoleon Hill taught that the very agitation you feel each time you check your bank balance is the one thing standing between you and the check you are waiting for, and if you have ever paced the floor at midnight adding up bills in your head, you already know the fear I am speaking of. Napoleon Hill wrote, "Faith is the only known antidote for failure," and he set that down not as a comforting sentiment, but as a working law he had watched operate in the lives of men who rose from nothing and men who never rose at all. Let me ask you plainly, do you believe that money is drawn toward panic, toward a mind racing and grasping and gripping the throat of every dollar as though it might vanish? Or do you believe, as Hill insisted he had proven through decades of study, that money moves toward the mind that is settled, the mind that expects rather than begs? Hill would stop you right there and say, "Do you see it? The very thing you think you must feel first, the relief, the calm, the ease, is not the reward that arrives after the money. It is the condition the subconscious mind requires before it can go to work at all. You have had it backward. You have been waiting to feel calm until the money comes, and Hill taught that the money is waiting on you to become calm first. Say it with me. I am calm in the face of every circumstance. I am confident in the power of my own definite purpose. I am certain that what I conceive and believe, I achieve. Again, I am calm in the face of every circumstance. I am confident in the power of my own definite purpose. I am certain that what I conceive and believe, I achieve. And if this is the first lesson of mine to reach you, subscribe now, so that tomorrow's teaching finds you the same way this one did. Now, if something in you just went quiet when you spoke those words, type the 2 words "I achieve" in the comments below, and let that be your seal on what you have just declared. The first key is this, that calm is not the reward of wealth, it is the requirement for it. Picture the man who checks his bank balance 9 times before noon, his hand trembling slightly on the telephone, his stomach tight, his mind repeating the sum of what he owes rather than the sum of what he intends to earn. Hill taught that the subconscious mind acts upon the thought that is mixed with the strongest emotion, and if the emotion beneath that man's thought is dread, then dread is what gets planted, and dread is what the subconscious faithfully reproduces in his circumstances. Now picture another man, same bills, same ledger, same uncertain month, but this man has written his definite purpose on a card, and read it that morning with feeling. His hands are steady, his breathing is even. He does not deny the bills are due. He simply refuses to let the bills author his emotion. Hill would tell you it is not that the calm man has more money in this moment. It is that his mind is no longer transmitting the very static that keeps money at a distance. Let me tell you of a small shopkeeper Hill might well have studied, a woman who kept a dry goods store through the hardest years of her town. Every morning before she unlocked her door, she stood alone behind the counter and steadied her breathing for 1 full minute, not because the ledger looked promising. It rarely did, but because she had learned that a trembling hand behind a counter draws trembling customers, and a steady hand draws steady trade. She was not pretending her circumstances were easy. She was simply declining to let those circumstances write the emotion that her subconscious mind would then carry out into her day. It is not the calm that follows the sale. It is the calm that precedes it. And it is not denial of the debt, it is refusal to let the debt shout louder than the purpose. This week, before you open a single bill or a single account balance, sit for 60 seconds and steady your breathing until your hand could sign your name without a tremble. That is the whole exercise, small as it looks, and it is the doorway through every key that follows. Because a mind still shaking cannot receive an instruction, it can only repeat its fear. I do not fear the ledger fears my calm. The second key is this, that the subconscious mind cannot be reasoned with. It can only be instructed, and it takes its instruction not from your circumstances, but from the feeling behind your repeated words. Hill told the story of a young man named Edwin Barnes, who arrived at the workshop of Thomas Edison having ridden in on a freight train, with no money, no introduction, and no visible qualification whatsoever. And when Barnes stood before Edison, he did not say he hoped to work with him someday. He said he had come to become the partner of Thomas Edison. And Hill was careful to note that Barnes did not shout this, did not plead it, did not sweat through it. He stated it the way a man states his own name, with total calm certainty, because in his own mind the partnership was already an accomplished fact, and years later it became one in the world as well. Notice what Barnes did not do. He did not wait until he felt qualified. He did not wait until Edison's office had a place for him. He spoke the instruction first, and let the circumstance arrange itself around the instruction afterward. That is the whole of autosuggestion as Hill taught it. It is not a hopeful wish whispered nervously into the dark. It is a settled order given to the subconscious, with the same plain confidence a man uses to tell his own hand to reach for a cup. Now bring this down to an ordinary week of your own. Picture a woman preparing for an interview she badly needs. If she spends the morning rehearsing every way the interviewer might reject her, running the humiliation forward in her mind again and again, she walks in already defeated, because she has spent all week instructing her subconscious in fear rather than in purpose. But if that same woman writes one sentence, stating plainly that she is the right person for this position and that she conducts herself accordingly, and reads it aloud morning and night in a level, unhurried voice, she walks into that room carrying an instruction of calm certainty rather than an instruction of dread. Same woman, same interview, same qualifications, but a mind that has been fed a different order. This is why Hill insisted the written statement must be read with feeling but never with strain. Panic in the voice is static that scrambles the instruction before it ever reaches the subconscious. Calm in the voice is the clear signal that lets the order land intact. It is not enough to think your purpose once in passing. Hill taught that the instruction must be repeated, morning and night, until the subconscious accepts it as settled fact, rather than as wishful hoping. This week, write your definite purpose in one clean sentence, and speak it aloud when you rise, and again before you sleep. Not with strain in your voice, but with the flat, quiet certainty of a man reading his own address. And watch how differently your days begin to arrange themselves once the order you are giving is calm rather than frightened. I speak my purpose plainly, and my subconscious obeys the calm, not the panic. The third key is this, that no mind reaches great achievement alone, and the harmony Hill called the mastermind cannot exist for one instant in a room full of frightened, grasping people. Hill studied Andrew Carnegie's method closely, and the story Hill told is that Carnegie gathered a group of some 20 men, chemists, financiers, salesmen, and organizers, into what he called his mastermind alliance. And Hill observed that the value of that alliance was not merely the sum of their individual knowledge, it was a third invisible force that arose only when their minds met in genuine harmony. And harmony, Hill was careful to point out, is a condition of calm, not of excitement. Two anxious minds do not blend, they collide. Two calm minds working toward one definite purpose create a current between them that neither could generate alone. Let us take this apart in pieces. First, consider what actually happens in a room where fear is doing the talking. Picture a family gathered around a kitchen table late on a Sunday night, trying to decide whether to keep the family business or sell it. The father is frightened of losing what his own father built. The mother is frightened of the debt on the books. The eldest son is frightened of disappointing them both. And every voice at that table is speaking from dread rather than from purpose. Hill would tell you plainly that no mastermind can form there, because a mastermind is not simply people occupying the same room, it is minds meeting in genuine agreement of feeling, and three trembling minds do not agree. They simply take turns being afraid out loud. The meeting ends after midnight with nothing decided, and everyone more exhausted than when they sat down. Second, consider that same family 1 month later. The father has spent his mornings reading his written purpose aloud. The mother has stopped rehearsing the debt and started rehearsing the plan. And when they gather again around that same table, the entire temperature of the room has changed. No one is pretending the business is easy, but no one is bringing panic to the table either. And Hill taught that it is precisely this calm, held by more than one mind at once, that generates the third force he named the mastermind. Ideas arrive at that second meeting that none of the three had thought of alone. The son suggests a supplier none of them had considered. The mother remembers a customer she had forgotten, and none of this was mystical. It was simply what a settled mind can do once it is no longer spending all its strength defending itself against fear. Third, consider your own circle for a moment. The friend who calls you at midnight in a state of panic over money does not sharpen your thinking. He clouds it. His fear becomes a draft that blows through your own calm and chills it. But the partner, the spouse, the trusted counselor who sits across from you with a level voice and a level mind, that is the one who multiplies your capacity rather than dividing it. Hill taught that you should choose the company you keep on your definite purpose as carefully as a farmer chooses the seed he plants, because a mind in true harmony with yours will lend you strength you did not know you had, and a mind in panic will borrow strength from you until you have none left for your own purpose. This week, choose one person, only one, with whom you can speak your definite purpose calmly, and ask them to hold that purpose with you as though it were their own for the length of one conversation. Notice how differently your mind moves afterward. Notice, too, how differently the conversation goes when neither of you brings your fear to the table, only your purpose. I meet every counsel with a level mind, and a level mind draws worthy allies toward it. The fourth key is this, that the calm mind reads temporary defeat correctly, while the panicked mind mistakes it for final failure. And let me ask you plainly, how many times in your own life have you laid down a good tool simply because your hands were trembling too hard to keep swinging it? Hill told of a man named R.U. Darby, who staked his savings and his uncle's savings into a gold mining claim, who drilled and dug and found a vein rich enough to make them wealthy men, until the vein disappeared. And Darby, in a fit of discouragement, sold his equipment for a few $100s to a junk dealer and walked away. And that junk dealer, calm enough to consult an engineer before quitting, learned that the vein had merely faulted, that it resumed only 3 feet from where Darby's own drill had stopped, and that junk dealer took millions of dollars from the ground Darby had abandoned. Now notice, Hill was careful to point out, the ground did not change between the day Darby quit and the day the junk dealer began digging again. The only thing that changed was the state of mind brought to the same 3 feet of rock. Darby's mind was racing, adding up losses, hearing his uncle's disappointment before it was even spoken, and a racing mind cannot call an engineer. It can only reach for the exit. The junk dealer's mind was level, and a level mind asks one more question before it surrenders anything. Think of the ordinary version of this in your own week, the phone call that does not get returned, the deal that appears to fall through on a Tuesday afternoon. The panicked man decides in that very hour that the whole venture is finished, and he tells his family so before supper, while the calm man simply says, "This looks like defeat, and I have not yet asked what it actually means." Hill insisted that temporary defeat always carries the seed of an equal or greater benefit, but a man cannot read a seed while his hands are shaking too hard to hold it up to the light. This week, the next time a plan of yours falls through, before you decide anything, sit still for 5 full minutes and simply breathe. Let the first wave of panic pass all the way through you, before you speak a single word about what it means. Do not decide in the storm. Decide only after the storm has passed, and ask the one question Darby never thought to ask: how many feet remain between me and the vein I have not yet found? I do not decide in the storm. I decide after the storm has passed through me. Friend, if this teaching has done anything for you today, subscribe so tomorrow's lesson can find you. I promise you it will always be given plainly, and always be given in this same calm spirit. The fifth key is this, and it is the deepest one I have for you today. So walk through it with me slowly. Hill wrote of what he called the 6 ghosts of fear, poverty, criticism, ill health, loss of love, old age, and death, and he called them ghosts deliberately, because he said not one of them has any real substance. Each is merely a state of mind, manufactured and kept alive by nothing more than repeated, undisciplined thought. And of these 6, Hill said the fear of poverty does the widest damage, because it so easily disguises itself as simple worry. And worry, he taught, is nothing but fear sitting quietly at your table, refusing to announce itself. So let us take this apart piece by piece, the way Hill himself would have taken apart a man's excuses. First, consider how worry actually behaves inside a single ordinary day. 6 in the morning you wake, and before your feet touch the floor, your mind has already run the sum of what is owed against what is coming in. 7 o'clock, you are dressing while replaying yesterday's disappointing conversation with a client. 8 o'clock, you are driving, and your hands tighten on the wheel as you rehearse an argument with a bill collector who has not even called yet. Noon, you eat quickly, tasting nothing, because your mind is composing an apology for money you do not yet have. 3 in the afternoon, a small piece of good news arrives, and you cannot even enjoy it, because your nervous system is still braced for the next blow. 6 in the evening, you sit down to a meal with the people you love, and you are there in body only, because your mind has gone back to the ledger for the 9th time that day. 9 at night, you lie down exhausted, not from labor but from fear, rehearsed 100 times over, and Hill would tell you plainly, not $1 was earned by any of that rehearsal, and not $1 was lost by its absence. The entire day was spent feeding a ghost, and the terrible arithmetic of it is this: that a man can labor 8 honest hours and still hand over 16 more, unpaid, to a fear that produces nothing at all. Second, consider what the calm alternative actually looks like. Not a man who denies his circumstances, but a man who declines to rehearse them. 6 in the morning he wakes and speaks his written definite purpose once, calmly, before his feet touch the floor. 7 o'clock he dresses in silence, letting yesterday's disappointment remain in yesterday. 8 o'clock he drives with his hands loose on the wheel, because he has already decided the bill collector will be handled at the hour appointed for it, and not 1 moment before. Noon, he eats slowly and tastes his food. 3 in the afternoon, the same small good news arrives, and he receives it fully. Because his nervous system was never braced against a phantom. 6 in the evening, he sits at the same table with the same people, and he is actually present, because he has not spent his attention twice over on a debt that only needed paying once. 9 at night he sleeps, because he spent his emotion on his purpose and not on his fear. Same day, same bills, same uncertain month. Entirely different harvest of thought, and Hill taught that it is that harvest of thought, repeated day upon day, that the subconscious mind eventually reproduces as circumstance. Third, consider the tool Hill actually gave for closing the mind against this fog. He called it closing the mind against negative influence, and he meant it almost physically, the way you would close a door against a draft. Pause for a moment right now and pick one real worry that has been circling in you this week. Hold it in your mind plainly. Now say to it calmly, "Not now. I have appointed you an hour, and this is not it." And set it down. This is not denial. Hill was careful never to teach denial. It is postponement with authority. The calm mind does not pretend the bill does not exist. It simply refuses to pay it in worry 100 times before paying it once. In fact, fourth, consider that this same ghost rarely travels alone. Hill noted that the fear of poverty is nearly always accompanied by its cousin, the fear of criticism, the dread of what the neighbor will say, what the family will whisper, what the failure will look like from the outside. And it is this second ghost that keeps many a man from even attempting the plan that would have freed him, because he has already lost the argument in his own imagination before a single other person has spoken a word against him. Hill studied Henry Ford closely and observed that Ford weathered failures that would have ruined lesser men, an early company that collapsed, a public ridicule that followed him for years. And yet, Ford kept a mind so settled on his own definite purpose that Hill said his associates could not tell, from Ford's manner alone, whether a given week had brought triumph or disaster. That composure, Hill insisted, was not the coldness of a man who did not care. It was the calm of a man who had transferred his caring entirely into his purpose, and left none of it lying around to feed his fears. And Thomas Edison, across 10,000 failed experiments before the incandescent lamp finally held its light, was asked how he bore such repeated defeat, and Hill recorded that Edison did not experience them as defeats at all. He called them 10,000 ways that had been proven not to work, which is nothing but calm speaking the language of persistence. Notice that neither man silenced the ghost by arguing with it loudly. Each man simply declined to feed it his attention, and a ghost that is never fed, Hill taught, eventually starves for want of the very thing that gave it life. This week, name your one ghost honestly, out loud if you are alone. poverty, criticism, whatever it is, and then close the mind against it at a fixed hour each day. Not forever, just for that hour, and watch how much of your fear was never about the circumstance at all, and was only ever about the hour you gave it far too much of your day. I name my fear plainly, and I close the door on it at the hour I appoint. The sixth key is this, and it is the simplest one, that the man who drifts is the man whose mind is never calm. Because drifting is nothing more than living without a definite decision, and an undecided mind is a mind left open to every fear that passes by. Hill taught that decision is the beginning of the escape from drifting, not some distant future decision, but one made plainly in this very hour. Consider a man named Walter, who kept a small hardware store on a quiet corner for 11 years. Every evening he closed the register and told himself he would decide, tomorrow, whether to expand the store, whether to let the lease run out, whether to raise his prices, whether to finally open the second location he had sketched on the back of a receipt years before. And every tomorrow arrived exactly like the day before it. Walter was not lazy. Walter was not foolish. Walter was simply drifting, and Hill would tell you that drifting always wears the disguise of patience. It looks like waiting for the right moment, when in truth, it is only fear wearing a calendar as a mask. The drifting man rises undecided and spends his whole day reacting to the customer who complains, to the supplier who raises a price, to the rumor that a competitor is opening nearby. His mind is calm in appearance only. Underneath it is exhausted from carrying 100 unmade decisions at once. Now picture Walter on the single morning he finally decided. He wrote one sentence on that same receipt paper: I will open the second location within 18 months. And he read it aloud that night, plainly, the way a man states his own name. Nothing outside him changed that day. The lease was the same, the customers were the same, but Hill taught that something inside him changed entirely, because a mind fixed upon one decision no longer has to relitigate that decision every single morning. The drifting man spends his strength deciding the same question 1,000 times. The decided man spends his strength only once and then acts. This week, let this be your hour. Decide plainly, without fanfare, exactly what you want and roughly by when you intend to have it. Write it in one sentence if you have not already. Read it tonight before you sleep, in the same level voice you would use to state your own name. That single act of decision is what turns a drifting day into a directed one. And a directed mind, Hill insisted, is a calm mind. Because it no longer has to wonder what it is for, I decide now, and the man who decides need never drift again. Here is the whole picture. Calm is not the reward of wealth, it is the requirement for it. The instruction you feed your subconscious lands only when your voice is level, rather than frantic. The mastermind cannot form where fear sits at the table. Temporary defeat is read correctly only by a mind that has stopped shaking long enough to look at it. The ghosts of fear are dissolved not by denial, but by a calm mind that closes the door at an appointed hour, and the drifting man becomes a directed man the moment he decides. Plainly, in this very hour, 6 keys, but really one recognition, that every law Hill ever taught, definiteness of purpose, autosuggestion, the mastermind, persistence, all of it only operates through a mind that has first made itself calm enough to receive the instruction it is giving. If you want these 6 keys to become fixed habit rather than a pleasant memory of one video, I have built the definite aim method as an 11-minute daily companion. The written definite purpose, the morning and evening reading aloud, the closing of the mind against negative influence, all laid out for you in order so you are never guessing what to do next. It is priced modestly, under $20, backed by a plain 30-day refund if it does not serve you, and the link is in the description below. I am calm in the face of every circumstance. I am confident in the power of my own definite purpose. I am certain that what I conceive and believe, I achieve. And that, friend, is the whole of it. The calmer you become, the faster money starts reaching you, because it was never running toward your panic. It was only ever waiting on your peace.